Hi everyone, my name is Jen. I'm an author and a book reviewer, and for those of you who are already subscribed to my channel, you may feel like you're going back in time because I'm assuming that before this video I will have uploaded a video from our new place because we just moved, and you may recognise that this is our old flat. But I wanted to start this reading vlog today to start reading the Women's Prize Shortlist, which is being announced in just over a week, I think. It feels really weird filming this because I've signed an NDA to say that I won't talk about the shortlist. I work in books. I have been given the shortlist in advance so that I can prepare for an article I'm writing and also so I can film this video. And I know that this is obviously not going to accidentally get uploaded to the internet unless I do it, but still it feels weird to speak these things aloud, even though you won't be seeing it until it's public. Anyway, so I have just been sent the shortlist, but I haven't opened the email yet, so I don't know what it is. I did a vlog a few weeks ago reading as many of the long-listed books that I could. There are 16 books longlisted. I ended up reading 8.5 of them, and the Women's Prize have sent me the books I didn't already have, so I have all of them here. Let's do a quick recap of the books that I've already read, and my glasses are dirty, excuse me, and my predictions quickly for the shortlist. So I have read, and these are in no particular order because, as you can see, bareness behind me, things are a little bit chaotic, so these books need to be put in a box so we can travel with them. But I have read The Bread the Devil Knead by Lisa Allen-Agostini. This one I thought was really lyrical. I liked the voice in it, but I felt that the plot wasn't, it felt a little bit predictable in places, so I didn't love it, but I liked the way it was written. Salt Lick by Lulu Allison was also one that I didn't particularly like. Again, I felt as though there were a few too many obvious devices used, so I didn't like that one so much. I did talk about this in the long listed video, which I'll link down below. I loved Build Your House Around My Body by Violet Kupersmith. This was my second favourite out of the books that I read. My favourite was Creatures of Passage by Morowa Yejidé. So these two I'm hoping are going to be on the shortlist. I read The Sentence by Louise Erdrich, which is a ghost story set in a bookshop, and it's exploring lots of different things. In fact, I felt there may be one too many things, and I liked parts of it. I was unsure of other parts. It wasn't a favourite, but I did enjoy a lot of things about it. I really enjoyed The Paper Palace. I thought it was the book that swept me up the most. It was the easiest to read, and I don't think that should be underestimated, because I think having a seamless plot and something that's really gripping is very difficult to do as an author. I know this. So I respected this book a lot for that, for how compelling it was, how I didn't realise how much time was passing when I was reading it. I think that's a sign of a very good book. I read The Book of Form and Emptiness by Ruth Ozeki. Had lots of complicated feelings about it. Again, some parts I loved, some parts I didn't. I felt it was maybe a little bit too long, and like with The Sentence, maybe exploring a few too many things, and I felt it could have been shortened and some things honed in on a little bit more. Then the book that I read a little bit of was This One Sky Day by Leone, and I fell in love with this one, but I haven't finished reading it yet. I also listened to The Exhibitionist by Charlotte Mendelson, which I enjoyed, but I don't think is probably going to be on the shortlist. That's just my gut feeling on it. So out of the ones that I have read, I would predict that these are the three that are maybe going to be on the shortlist. This One Sky Day, Build Your House Around My Body, and also Creatures of Passage. The reason I'm not saying that Paper Palace, I'm guessing, will be on the shortlist is because I know that it explores quite similar themes to Meg Mason's book, which I haven't read and I'll show you in a second. And I have a feeling maybe that one will be on the shortlist. And my gut feeling says that if that one's on the shortlist, then Paper Palace won't be. That's just how I'm rationalising that in my head. Then the 6 books that I haven't read, we've got The Great Circle by Maggie Shipstead, which I am sure will be on the shortlist because everybody loves this book. So I'm not even going to talk about it right now because I'm so confident it's going to be on the shortlist. Therefore, I will be reading it and talking about it in this video. This is Careless by Kirsty. This one I've heard good things about, but it wasn't one that I was eager to pick up straight away. I have a feeling it's not going to be on the shortlist, but if it is, obviously I'll be reading it. Likewise, Remote Sympathy was one that I wasn't particularly drawn to. This is a World War II novel. It may be on the shortlist, and if it is, I'll be reading it. But it wasn't one, again, that I was drawn to for the long list video. Sorrow and Bliss is the one that I mentioned before that I think explores similar themes to The Paper Palace. And that's why I said I didn't think The Paper Palace was going to be on the shortlist, and I think this one will be. I realise I haven't read it yet, but people have great things to say about it, and I think if it is shortlisted, I'm going to listen to the audiobook of this one. Then there was Opal and Nev, the revival of Opal and Nev, which is a book about music set in the present day and the 1970s about, do you call it a band if it's two people? A duo who used to work together in the music industry, and they've got back together, and it's looking about their relationship over the decades. And again, it wasn't one that I was immediately drawn to, but will be reading if it's on the shortlist. And finally, there is Flamingo by Rachel Elliott, which I think I've heard people recommend for fans of Sarah Winman, which I think you can tell by the cover of this book. This is about a family, and the mother of one family who is in love or has a crush on the mother of another family, and it's following their relationship throughout the decades. So if it's on the shortlist, I shall be reading that. So out of the ones that I haven't read, I'm guessing that, oh, hang on, I'm missing one. And how apt, the one that I was missing is this one, which is The Island of Missing Trees by Elif Shafak. And this one, I think probably is going to be shortlisted as well, because I've heard great things about it. So this would be my predicted shortlist then. Meg Mason, Maggie Shipstead, Elif Shafak, Morowa Yejidé, Violet Kupersmith, and Leone Ross. That's my prediction. You probably already know, because if you're watching this video, you may have seen the shortlist announcement already, but let me get this secret email. The 6 books that have been shortlisted are... Okay, I am half right, and hilariously, the books that I am right on are the ones that I haven't read. So I was correct in saying that Elif Shafak, Maggie Shipstead and Meg Mason have all been shortlisted, but my favourite books out of the other long-listed books have not been shortlisted. So the ones that I love the most from the long list that I've read are not here. So we have instead The Bread the Devil Need by Lisa Allen-Agostini. As I said, I really do like the writing style in this. And if you want to hear my in-depth thoughts, you can go over to my long list video. Then we've got The Sentence by Louise Erdrich. This one was one, as I said, was kind of a mixed bag. Some bits I loved, some bits I didn't. It's just, it's a lot, this book, which is not necessarily a bad thing. But I think it filled my head up with a lot of rather meta thoughts about what a book should be or shouldn't be. And I think that was kind of the point. And I liked the thoughts that it made me have, but I didn't love the reading experience. And finally, the one that has also been shortlisted is The Book of Form and Emptiness by Ruth Ozeki, which I had very similar feelings to The Sentence about, which is very interesting. I think these two are quite similar in that they're both quite philosophical and looking at the point of narrative and books. You know, like in the Oscars when films about films often get shortlisted. I sometimes find that with prizes when books about books get shortlisted because it kind of tugs at the old heartstrings a little bit. Okay, all right, so this is the shortlist. This is interesting. Here we go. I'm really excited to read the 3 that I haven't read yet. So I'm going to be doing that over the course of this video. But for now, I will disappear because I need to move house. So I'm going to go do that, and then I will come back and check in with you. And if you're new to my channel, I would love for you to subscribe, as well as talking about the books. I will maybe, I was going to say be taking you on walks, maybe just unpacking footage, we'll see. But there will be some kind of B-roll footage in this along with the book chat. And I would love for you to stick around. So, okay, I'm going to go. Bye. this is the first clip I'm filming talking in our new place, which is weird. I can't begin to tell you how tired I am. It is Sunday morning. We moved on Thursday, and I don't want to repeat myself too much because I've already made a video talking about moving, but we did it ourselves, and my body hurts a lot. I'm having to come down the stairs on my bum at the moment because my knees have just, they've had enough. So yes, but it is so nice to be here. And I've still got a lot of boxes to unpack, but the kitchen is done, which makes me feel just a bit centered. And yesterday, I really don't know why, but I couldn't sleep. So I decided I'm going to make hot cross buns at 4 in the morning. So I did that. And that was, I'm not really making sense, or my brain is not really working, but using a new oven, especially when you're baking and just, you know, getting used to it is nice. So I'm glad that I have done that, and I've got now leftover hot cross buns, which I'm going to have for breakfast. In fact, one of them is a hot lime bun because I ran out of the mixture that you need to do the crosses on top. But yes, I have been reading The Island of Missing Trees by Elif Shafak. I've started that. And it's really reminding me of the Ruth Ozeki book because they're both about grief and one parent not being there and immigration, and then also objects talking and narrating the book, because in the Book of Form and Emptiness a book does that, and then in this book a tree does that. So I'm finding it very, very similar at the moment. And likewise, I am listening to McMason's book, Sorrow and Bliss. I listened to most of that over the past 2 days as I was unpacking, and that is basically as if the Paper Palace and the Exhibitionist came together and had a book baby. And I'll talk about that more coherently when I am feeling more coherent. But at the moment, both of these books I'm liking, but I'm not loving, and I am trying to think about this really objectively, in the sense that is my tired state and moving affecting my enjoyment of these books? And I honestly don't think that it is, because when I'm in pain or when I'm stressed, books are great and distract me, and I welcome that as opposed to them being background noise or anything like that. So I'm really wanting to engage very much with these books. And so far I'm just feeling, I'm going to say lukewarm, and that feels really mean, and I don't mean it to. I'm just saying that's how I feel right now, and I hope that changes. So I will come back and talk to you when I have read some more and when I am more human. So I'll see you in a bit. Hi everyone, welcome to my office. It's kind of bare apart from the boxes, so it may be echoey because there's only the desk here. I haven't quite decided what I'm going to do with the space yet, which is obviously fine. We just moved in, but I do have some paint swatches. So I think I'll film a video at some point, maybe even just part of a reading vlog, showing you what I decide to do. But these are some of the colours that I've gone for, both for here and for downstairs, different colours for each one, but ones to think about, as well as a ton of fabric samples for sofas, because we need to decide that too. I want to know why all the cool colours are for the velvet sofas. I don't particularly want a velvet sofa. I just feel like they're a bit, I don't know, of the moment, and when I want a sofa to last, you know, for ages and ages and ages, and I don't know, I'm not huge. Maybe it's also the touch of velvet. Maybe it's that. There's something about velvet that I don't love, so probably not going to go for that. But they do have all the bright colours, and as you know, I do like the bright colours, so I'm going to have to make a decision on that. But we're here to talk about books, aren't we? We are. Also, when we moved, I thought, I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to put all of my winter jumpers in boxes so that I can store them away, because there's no point in having all of my winter clothes on the clothes rack and then moving everything and then doing a changeover later. I'll just do it now. And didn't the cold weather come back, and didn't I have to go finding my winter jumpers again? It's very cold today. But I finished reading The Island of Missing Trees and Sorrow and Bliss. And I really wish I was here to tell you that I had fallen in love with both of these books, but today is not that day. I think that there is a lot to admire about Sorrow and Bliss. It's about a woman called Martha, and she's thinking about her 2 marriages, but also her relationship with her sister, which was the relationship that I loved the most in this book. I found it the most touching. But as I mentioned in the last clip, which is no fault of this book at all, but it really is like some parts of the Exhibitionist and some parts of the Paper Palace have just come together and formed this narrative. So I wonder how I would feel about it if I'd read this before either of those 2 books. Probably a little bit different. The audiobook narration of this is brilliant. It's narrated by Emilia Fox, which I would definitely recommend, and it kept me engaged, but it's one of those books that I know I will probably not linger on in the future. I won't think about it that much. It made me laugh in places. One time her sister referred to her vagina as the Vaginosaurus wrecked after she'd had another baby, and that definitely made me giggle. There are painful moments in this. There are really great talks about mental health. But even after all of those things, I feel like what I can say about this book is that it's a good book. It's a competent book. The narrative voice is strong, but it didn't surprise me, and it didn't do anything I found particularly innovative. It was a solid book. It was a solid read, and I think out of the shortlist it's probably definitely going to be up there, but I didn't fall in love with it. And unfortunately, The Island of Missing Trees, I really didn't enjoy this book. This is a book about a teenager called Ada. I didn't always believe that she was a teenager either. Sometimes she felt much younger, sometimes much older. She didn't feel really concrete, and I couldn't really tell if that was the point. She is the child of 2 parents from Cyprus, one who is from a Greek family and one who's from a Turkish family, and it is about civil war and displacement and immigration. But again, as I mentioned in the last clip, there are so many similarities with the Book of Form and Emptiness. And like with Sorrow and Bliss, that is no fault of this book at all. But it's a strange shortlist, I think, is what I'm saying, is that there is so much similarities between the books. And I think there was more variety in the long list, and I wish that had been showcased more in the shortlist itself. The writing on a sentence by sentence level, again, is very beautiful in places, but it's a very sincere book. It's overly sentimental. It's not the kind of writing that I am personally drawn to. So that is definitely a personal taste kind of thing. Part of it is narrated by a fig tree, like in the Book of Form and Emptiness, when part of that is narrated by a book. And I felt as though that it was purposefully mythologizing the story. There's a lot of reference to Greek myth and women being turned into trees. Ada's mother's name means laurel, and there are obviously so many Greek myths about women who are turned into plants escaping violence. So that does make sense in one way, but by mythologizing it so much, I felt as though It meant the characters became a representation for the conversation that the author wanted to have. I don't always mind that in books. Ali Smith, for one, does that a lot, but I didn't really feel as though, for me personally, the writing could hold up the rest of the novel sufficiently. I don't really know how to explain it apart from saying this felt like a book that was trying really hard to be profound, and I just didn't enjoy that. There is pleasing imagery to do with butterflies and the meaning of names and the fact that trees communicate with each other underground via symbiosis, which is something that I find really fascinating. But because of the way that all of these things were brought together and the tone of the writing, ultimately it wasn't something that I could really get behind. I could see many people loving this book. I know that many people do love this book, but it's that earnestness which is just something that I'm just not drawn to in general in books. So I probably was never going to love a book that was written in this style. So we only have one book left. We have The Great Circle by Maggie Shipstead. So I will be reading that over the next few days, and I will come back to you and talk to you about it once that is read. I don't know if filming this last clip sitting on a beanbag is a mistake because it might make a lot of noise, but we don't have a sofa yet, so I'm sitting on this instead of sitting on the floor, but you can hear the birds here, which is very nice. Okay, so I have read The Great Circle by Maggie Shipstead, and I am pleased to say that this is my favourite book from all of the Women's Prize shortlisted books this year, and I feel a great sense of relief over that because, you know, I want to love what I'm reading, and I did love so much about this book. This novel is set across 2 time periods. So in the more present day one, we've got Hadley Baxter, who's a film star, and she's been in a very successful film franchise, which is reminiscent of Twilight, but she's recently fallen out of favour with the public because she had an affair, whereas her partner and her co-star also had an affair, but because he's a man, he's treated very differently, and people forget about that super quickly. So she decides to take this role in a smaller, lesser known film about a pilot called Marion Graves. And in the other section of the book, we're following Marion Graves when she lived in the early decades of the 20th century, longing to be a pilot. When I was reading Marion's section, I was so happily reminded of Ballet Shoes by Noel Streatfeild. So Hadley, Marion and the children in Ballet Shoes are all brought up by their uncle, or someone they call their uncle, because they don't know their parents, they're either absent or dead. And in Ballet Shoes there are 3 children. There is Pauline, Posy and Petrova, and Pauline and Posy love acting and dancing, and they're surrounded by women who want to be beautiful and be in the theatre, and Petrova's just really awkward in her own skin, and it is by communicating with 2 women who live in the house, who there's a lot of queer subtext to that, and also with another house guest, she learns that she wants to become a mechanic and then a pilot. And I was just really reminded of that when reading Marion's section, especially to do with her childhood, and that was really lovely. This is a novel about exploration, self-discovery, discovery of the earth as well. Wanting to flee but not really knowing where you want to go, knowing that there's more out there but not knowing what that might be. And for Hadley, when she was a child, she read Marion's book and she lost herself in that. And in coming to play her when she's an adult, she's thinking about what it means to represent a person and how we tell their story and how we fill in the gaps and assume certain narratives about their lives, and whether or not that is okay. That's obviously a very meta discussion to have within a book. What is the purpose of stories? What is the power of stories? How can you manipulate to tell stories that aren't particularly true? How problematic is that? And it's really interesting to see how Marion is portrayed within the film and the script, and then compare that to her life as we're reading it in the other parts of the book. Then also consider that this in itself is a book which is obviously pulling from lots of real life people who have lived and explored. Amelia Earhart is referenced a lot in the book, for instance, and there is a scene which is very reminiscent of the Titanic at one point too. So it is very self-consciously and brazenly repurposing bits of history and twisting them and turning them into something new, whilst also having conversations about those very things. There are many Shakespearean references within this book, which is quite fun. So one of those being that Marion is a twin and her twin brother is Jamie. Shakespeare used twins a lot in his plays, especially twins where one would be a girl and one would be a boy, so that there could be mistaken identities and people dressing up as each other and talking about the fluidity of gender. So it's used as a split self kind of thing to talk about gender norms and gender expectations and sexuality and breaking down boundaries. So that's in Marion's section, but then in the future we have Hadley, who is performing Marion. So she's taking that one step further, effectively dragging those explorations of gender onto the stage like a Shakespearean play. I didn't always feel like the book's discussion of gender was on point. So I think it does a great job of talking about freedoms that women had or didn't have in different time periods. And I think the way that it talks about sexuality is really interesting in places as well. And talking about how heteronormative stories are always the ones that are highlighted or assumed. Fully on board with that, definitely agree. But near the beginning, there is an Indigenous story that is thrown in talking about two-spirited people. And it's brought back at the end too, but it doesn't really go anywhere. And I felt as though the book was really out of its depth when it was talking about that. I feel like the Indigenous storyline deserved a much stronger presence if it was going to be there, not as this interesting add-on, which came across to me as and made me feel kind of uncomfortable. So I wasn't sure about that part of the book, but this book has a lot of brilliant things in it. There's discussion on art and how art is a different representation of life and what you see in the same way that writing is and that films are and that acting can be. Obviously, it's about how everything is linked as well. The title is The Great Circle. That's not just about trying to travel around the world, but how this story comes back again and again, and how fight for freedom and expression is a fight that comes up again and again in all different forms too. And there are subtle things that are just kind of fun, like the name Marion Graves. It definitely sounds like she's married and that is going to send her to her grave. There's a lot of tongue-in-cheek stuff like that going on too. I could definitely see this book being a film, one that would probably win several Oscars too. It didn't surprise me, and I say that in the same way that I said about Sorrow and Bliss. It didn't surprise me. Sometimes I think what I really love about a book is obviously the great storytelling. I want to feel as though the author is in control. I want to feel relaxed when reading, not as in I don't want to feel tense or anything like that, but I want to feel assured that this author knows what they're doing, that this is a book that has been crafted, recrafted, edited, made into the best thing it can possibly be. But at the same time, I also like a novel that has a bit of spikiness to it, something that is a little bit unpolished, something that shows me that a writer is experimenting with something that, I don't know, is quite hot and they can't hold on to. And I think sometimes that's where the magic really happens. So there's something about this book, which may sound like a really strange thing to say, that feels in many respects a little bit too perfect. So I stand by my saying that my three favourite books from this long list are still Violet Kupersmith's Build Your House Around My Body, Leone Ross's This One Sky Day, and Creatures of Passage by Morowa Yejidé, because all of those books were a little bit explosive. They had all the great narrative elements, but they also were shocking and experimental and interesting and in ways that were surprising and delighting. That is where my heart lies, but I can absolutely appreciate that this is a brilliant book. So from the shortlisted books, not going back to talk about the ones that aren't actually on the shortlist, if I had to talk about my personal enjoyment of these books and how I would rank them, at the bottom of the pile, I think quite jointly, I would have The Bread the Devil Need by Lisa Allen-Agostini. Love the voice in this. There were very predictable plot points which took me out of the story and meant I just got very frustrated with it. And Elif Shafak's The Island of Missing Trees. I appreciated the imagery, the mythology, but the tone of the book just wasn't one that I really gelled with. Then next, I would say that The Sentence by Louise Erdrich. and The Book of Form and Emptiness by Ruth Ozeki kind of sit a little bit side by side for me in terms of enjoyment. And if you want to know my thoughts on both of these books, you can head over to the long listed video, which will be linked in the description box down below. Just above those, we've got Sorrow and Bliss by Meg Mason, and then at the top of the pile for me would be The Great Circle by Maggie Shipstead. So I would love to know what your thoughts are on this shortlist. I would say for me, there have definitely been books out of the whole long list that I have loved. This particular shortlist is not my personal favourite shortlist from the past few years. I have read the entire Women's Prize shortlist for the last 7 or 8 years, and there are always going to be some books that I love and some books that I don't, and that's absolutely fine. Obviously that's part and parcel of it, but as a whole I think this year's shortlist isn't one that I've loved as much as others in the past, which is not to downplay how much I love individual books within the whole long list of books this year. I would love to know what your thoughts are. If you have read these or some of these, if you're planning to read them, let me know in a comment down below. We can have a chat. If you are new to my channel, I would love for you to subscribe and stick around. I talk about books, the history of fairy tales, disability and disfigurement. And if you enjoy my content and would like to consider tipping me over on Patreon, that's also very kind. That is linked in the description box down below too. I hope you're all having a good week, and I'll speak to you very soon. Lots of love. Bye.